Alright, what's up YouTube? So this is going to be part 2 for the upgraded fuel pump. This is going to be for the bigger power guys, the guys that are making above 500 horsepower and doing a return system. This video is mainly for you guys. I'm going to show you guys how to set up the siphoning tube that draws fuel from the other side of the tank. I'm going to show you guys how to set that up correctly, because there's a specific way to set it up. All right, so as you guys can see right here, this is pretty much the finished product. I'm actually taking this video after I finished doing the how-to video on this. And the reason why I'm doing that is because I think the way how I presented it while doing this video, some parts of it, I think it was pretty much like a off-topic and not an accurate description of what's going on. So I'm gonna go ahead and explain to you guys why we're doing this right here. All right, so the reason why we're doing this is because whenever you get a bigger fuel pump, whether it be the Dishworks 400 or the Walbro 450 or 525, those bigger fuel pumps, most of the time, they're not gonna fit inside your fuel canister basket, which goes inside here. You'll see it later throughout the video, what I'm talking about. So they don't fit. So we pretty much delete that fuel canister. And when you delete that fuel canister, you pretty much delete your stock fuel pressure regulator. And when you delete your stock fuel pressure regulator, it pretty much stops your siphoning tube from working, which is this guy right here. What your siphoning tube is it siphons fuel from the other side of the tank. So it draws in fuel from the other side of the tank, drops it in right here, and it's working off of the fuel pressure regulator. I'll show you guys how it looks like later on in the video. But basically, like I said before, you're pretty much deleting it whenever you go with the bigger fuel pump system. So that's why it's very important to set it up a specific way that I'll be showing you guys in the video, and opposed to getting like the Piranha Raceworks fuel pressure regulator bypass unit that they sell. People have been using that bypass unit for the longest time from Piranha Raceworks, and a lot of people have said it doesn't work. It doesn't draw in fuel from the other side of the tank, and there's 2 design flaws on why it doesn't work. So that's why I'm showing you guys how to do this a very specific way, which is using the Venturi. That way you guys don't run into this problem later on. The problem I'm talking about is the fact that whenever you get below half a tank inside the fuel cell, that because you don't have your return system from the siphon tank drawing in fuel, you're losing out on fuel refilling this basket faster with the aftermarket fuel return system. So what I mean by that is whenever you're under half a tank, whenever you're stepping on the gas, the fuel, of course, it's gonna slosh to the back of the tank, and it's gonna leave this pretty much empty. Whatever's in the basket right now gets sucked up for the first few seconds, but as soon as it needs more fuel, there's nothing to suck up. You suck up nothing but air, and you pretty much lean out. And it's a very common problem that we have. So a lot of people, what they do right now to get past it is always drive on a full tank of gas, which is, it's like really shitty and dumb to do, because you should be able to use all the gas that's inside your tank before refilling it and going racing again, So the reason why we're doing this is to pretty much fix that for the main reason, but as well as to show you guys how to set it up correctly and how the Venturi functions and why the Piranha Raceworks unit does not work as good as the Venturi unit does. But that's mainly what this Venturi setup is, basically what it's supposed to fix. And I'm just here to show you guys how it works. I'm not saying that Piranha Raceworks has shitty products or they're trash or anything like that, but I'm saying that the products that they offer for the fuel pressure regulator bypass, it doesn't work as it's supposed to work, okay? As well as their basket design flaw. They pretty much shave out like this whole basket, and pretty much any fuel that's in here, it lets it all out. But I'm not here to bash anybody, and I'm not here to say Piranha Raceworks is trash or anything like that, because they do have some good products on there. But the product that they have for our fuel return system setup for the siphoning tube, I wouldn't recommend it at all. Just like the Mishimoto radiator that we have. The Mishimoto is like a good company, but the radiator that we have for Mishimoto for the 2.0s, they have a high tendency to crack or leak from somewhere, and that's due to the design flaw or whoever makes them. And it's just that one product. It's nothing else. Everything else Mishimoto makes is pretty decent. But the radiator for the 2.0s that they sell, the aftermarket unit, for some odd reason, and I don't know why, but the majority of the time, they always end up leaking. And that's why if you're gonna get a mission motor radiator, I always tell you guys to make sure you get it with warranty. I wouldn't buy it from a third party or anything like that. I'd buy it directly from Mission Moto so you can keep that warranty. But anyways, let's go ahead and get on to the install process of this video so you guys can stop listening to me talk. So now that I kind of gave you pretty much a little summary of like why I'm showing you guys how to do this a specific way, let's go ahead and you know, just dive right into it. And the first thing we're going to want to do is actually get our blade, and we're going to go ahead and cut this guy and cut this guy, and then we're going to remove this line. I really need to get a GoPro because sometimes it is so hard to do with just one hand. All right, so that's cut. Now what I'm gonna do is just up this one up, and now this is trash, and this is also trash. We're not gonna be using this. So tossing this, and we're tossing that. Next thing we're gonna be doing is cutting this dude. I already cut it because it was giving me a hard time. Same deal, use the exact knife and just slit it, bring it up, toss it over here. Don't cut this off because it's very important. After that, we're gonna come to this guy and we're gonna take off our OEM fuel pressure regulator. So the way you take off your fuel pressure regulator, all you have to do is basically just pull down on this side right here, and then it's gonna clip out. It comes out just like that. And this is just one piece. So this, and then this. Pull this guy down and tell them by O-ring. Of course, our OEM fuel pump is also trash, and the sock. Put that in our garbage pile. Make sure you keep this though, because this is going to be very important. You're going to be needing, I believe, this side of the pigtail. So I'm just going to cut these wires off. All right, so I went ahead and cut it. This one you're not going to need. This top part connects to the top hat of the fuel assembly basket, which is right here. If you guys remember, it connects right there. So you're going to need this because you're going to have to use that harness to wire into this, because you're going to have black to black, which is ground, and yellow, which is power, to blue, which is power. And that's pretty much how you have your own harness. All right, so this is what the harness is gonna look like. This is the harness for the pump, and then all we do is just solder it to the old harness that connects to the old fuel pump, and that connects to the top hat of the fuel assembly basket. A lot of you guys might be asking what this wire does. This wire is a electric ground strap. On the Pt.1s, we don't have this. On the BK2 baskets, y'all will have this, so you'll need to utilize this with the for the OEM electric ground strap. I don't remember the exact placement of it, but you can always extend this wire. It's good to have because it prevents static from happening in the fuel basket. Pretty much from here, the next thing we're going to be doing is trimming down this little area right here. It's like a little box. Originally that's where your OEM fuel pressure regulator went and then dropped in fuel. But we're going to go ahead and delete that because what we're going to be using doesn't require this anymore. Actually, it doesn't require it. It's the fact that it's a bit bigger that it won't fit because of this. So we're going to have to get a Dremel and we're going to have to cut this. All right, so as soon as I got my Dremel, it actually broke on me. So I had to go to Walmart the next day and buy a new one. So I bought this Dremel. It's like 30 bucks. And the bit I used was this. And then I also used a cutting bit. It's this cutting bit right here. So this is now drilled. As you can see, it's pretty smooth on the bottom right there and on the sides. So our next step after this is actually going to be to cut this guy now. And we'll be cutting off about, we're actually leaving on about like an inch of this barb right here, and then we're going to throw away the bottom piece of it. For this part, I'm going to be using my metal cutting blade. You don't have to buy this, but I just brought it because it makes the job way easier and faster. And how you're going to be doing that is, like I said, you're going to measure about an inch or so from right here, probably about like right here, and you're going to cut right there just straight. And it's going to look just like that when you're done. Whenever you're done cutting it with the wheel, make sure you deburr it. That way, whenever you put the hose on here, it's not going to cut it or anything. So very important to deburr it in the inside and the outside. Now we're going to go on to our final step, which is pretty much cutting out some of this material right here so we can go ahead and fit our new hoses through here. All right, so I actually went ahead and did this first because it's a little bit easier. This bottom piece right here is small, so this bottom of the pump for the pickup to where the sock goes, I had to enlarge this area, so I just went ahead and just cut it all the way. And that's just because I can make this a little bit more flexible whenever I put it inside here. You'll see what I'm talking about once I'm done. So I went ahead and pretty much like poured these out to have the PTFE tubing fit through it. So these fit now. So all my thermal stuff's pretty much done for now. The last thing I'll have to do is drill my return line hose, which is going to be somewhere right here, and I'll do that on one of the last steps. But I'm going to show you guys what we're going to be using today to have our siphoning tube work. What I have right here in front of me is a Radium Venturi. This guy, pretty much it's like this guy over here. It's basically the OEM unit, but to work with a aftermarket fuel pressure regulator system or a return system. So you pretty much have like your siphoning tube from the right side and then your return line on top right here. And that way both the siphoning tube and your return get dropped to the bottom of the fuel basket still. So you can have this basket full at all times so you won't have any fuel starvation. Another good thing to buy with this is this right here. This is a duct bill. This duct bill is designed to reduce aeration. If you guys don't know what aeration is, say like if I were to, say like if this was my return line, right? And if my return line was just dumping fuel straight down, well, that causes aeration, it causes bubbles. And when you have bubbles enter the fuel pump, it's really bad, so you don't want that. So to prevent aeration from happening, you would get this duct bill, and this duct bill will prevent it from happening. But that's what we're gonna be using to make our siphoning tube work still, making our fuel return system work in conjunction with it to fill up our fuel pump basket and pretty much retain its OEM features. So let's go ahead and start setting this up. So as you can see, this guy has a very big opening right here. And then these fittings do not. This one's small, this one's big, and I believe this one's like a medium size, this green one. These three fittings will be going on your flow port, okay? The black fitting is specifically for your siphoning port. So your black fitting specifically has to go on a siphoning port, okay? But for the flow port, it has to be one of these three fittings. Now, depending on your application, how much fuel you're running, you know, all that good stuff, you're gonna have to decide which one you're gonna wanna use, okay? For my application, I'll be running the gold one. All right, so I noticed that on that part that I just mentioned right now that I'll be using the gold orb, but however, this gold orb is actually used for fuel pumps that are 650 liters per hour or higher. And the green orb is going to be for pumps that are under 650 liters per hour. This silver one, you're not going to use at all. You only use this one if you're doing a teed off configuration of the Venturi, which is not what we're doing at all. So you're only left with the gold or the green. And for the Dutchworks 400, as you can see right here, it flows 440 max, and it just decreases from here. So because it flows 440 liters per hour, we're going to be using the green orb and not the gold orb. If you guys are running like a LS build and doing a twin pump or 3-pump system, fuel pump system, then I would recommend using the gold orb, okay? But yeah, back onto the video. So I just put in my black port. Before you put the port in there, it's recommended to lube it up. So I lubed it up with WD-40. Once you tighten it up, the O-ring that's on here does all the sealing. So Don't over tighten it, just snug it up real good, okay? And this golden orb will be on the top part right here where it says flow. And after that, this is all assembled. And then I'll show you guys how to set it up using this. And this is what it's gonna look like whenever it's done. Let's go on to the next part. As I was getting ready to put the Venturi in and feed it through and everything, I actually ran into like a clearance problem. So what I had to do was pretty much trim up this side right here and cut it off completely, and then just make this into like an oval shape right here. And the reason why is because this tubing, I don't want it to kink really hard at all. And the way how it was fitting beforehand, it was kinking really bad. So to help straighten the kink, I went ahead and just shaved this off, and now it sits like that. So it's gonna sit like that. And quick note, before you install everything, make sure you take your measurements, because whenever you have all this assembled, you're gonna wanna make sure that your basket, pretty much you're gonna wanna make sure that your fuel basket is touching the bottom of the fuel cell. So take your measurements before you make everything final. Like I said, this has to be touching the bottom of the fuel tank. And so what I did was I just went to the car, put this together real quick, and then let it just go down. And then while it went down, I was pressing this top hat down to where it would touch the bolts. And then once it lined up with everything, I measured it, which is about like right here. About like right here. I measured it, and then I took note of it. And then when I started assembling this, I noticed that I'm probably gonna have to trim a little bit of this up, which is totally fine. But this guy is actually spot on. This long tube right here has to be trimmed for whenever I make the hole for the return AN style fitting. But yeah, do your measurements beforehand, okay? Before you make everything final. So the first thing I'm gonna go ahead and do is actually put the fuel pump inside here, and then I'm also gonna put a clamp around it. And this clamp is basically just gonna hug these two beams right here. And these beams are pretty strong, so you can tighten it down just a little bit. This is what it should look like whenever you're done with it. See how the hose clamp is tight right here, but it's not like breaking it or anything. That's how you want it. You don't want it too tight. This thing's not gonna go anywhere. Also, I put on the fuel sock already. Make sure you push that in really good. It's not gonna go anywhere. After this step, we're gonna go ahead and put in our Venturi now, and then we're gonna line everything up, and I'll show you guys what it looks like whenever I'm done. All right, so I got everything in there, but it looks like there's like stress right here. So I'm actually gonna get my Dremel, and then I'm actually gonna go a little bit more around on this. That way there can be less tension on this hose right here. But other than that, this hose came up perfectly fine, and the Venturi fits perfectly snug down there. So while this is like this, I'm gonna go ahead and get my top hat, and I'm gonna measure to make sure everything is good. Pretty much figured out where all my lines are gonna be going. So now I'm at the part where I can go ahead and start using these ear clamps. You guys know what ear clamps are. They're just clamps that you compress together with a set of pliers, and then they lock in place permanently. I forgot to show you guys this part. I was doing it, and I guess the phone wasn't recording, so I don't have this part, but it's very simple. I just drilled a hole using a step bit, and I went on the step bit to around right here, one of these two, and I stopped. And then I would always, as the step bit went bigger, I went ahead and always got my AN fitting with the bar at the bottom, and I would just double check to make sure that it would seat like that. And if you overcut it just a little bit, that's totally fine, because you do have these PTFE washers that you're supposed to put right here as well. Once you lock everything in place, these PTFE washers pretty much prevent any kind of leaking from happening once everything is secured. I am gonna note real quick that on the bottom, you're gonna have to pretty much get this as flat as possible, because you're gonna be using another PTFE washer, and you're gonna be placing it right there as well, and that should do the trick. So you're gonna have to flatten down. You see how like just like squares right here? Pretty much you're gonna have to get your Dremel and then flatten all this out to where you can fit your washer. So there's that. And of course you have to do it also because you have a locking nut. And that locking nut will look just like that. So you're gonna have your fitting, a washer right here, PTFE washer, and another PTFE washer. And then of course your locking nut that tightens everything in place so it doesn't move. And that's pretty much going to be your return line. This is a -6 AN. If you're using -8 or -10 or whatever, for whatever reason, then you will use those fittings. But this is the placement of my -6 AN fitting that I'll be using. And this goes directly down into this spot right here where it connects to the Venturi right here. So the Venturi will be like this, and the return tube will be on here. And of course, the siphoning tube, again, is gonna be this guy, and this will pull in the fuel from the siphoning side of the gas tank. So I'm gonna go ahead and pretty much set everything up. Use my ear clamps to clamp everything down and make sure everything's good. And then I'll show you guys what it looks like right now. All right, so it's the next day, guys. Everything looks really good right now. This is how it's gonna look. Your return line coming down here to your port. And of course your siphoning tube, which is this guy, going up to the silver part that we cut. And of course this is going to be your fuel feed line. This goes to the fuel pump. So we're going to go ahead and MacGyver this into the fuel basket right now, get everything lined up, and then we'll show you guys the final product. All right, so this is what the finished product looks like. As you can see, PTFE hose, PTFE hose, PTFE hose, ear clamp on both sides of the hoses, ear clamps up here for the feed. I wasn't able to put an ear clamp on here because I had pushed this hose too far on here already, and this is pretty much like a push lock. I wasn't able to push it out completely, so what I did was just use a regular small clamp and then just tying it really well on here so it's not going anywhere. But yeah, so this is set up for a return system. Of course, it goes through here to the Venturi. And this is your OEM siphoning tube that pulls fuel from the other side of the tank. Also going to the Venturi. So it feeds the bottom of your fuel basket right there. And remember, it's important to get that duct bill, because if you don't get that duct bill, then you're gonna create aeration in there, and that's really bad for the fuel pump. If it sucks in air, it's bad. It'll pretty much, you're sucking in air. You don't want that. So yeah, this is the finished product of this. I'm gonna be going over the wires again soon because I don't like these are PTFE rated heat shrink tubes, but I don't like how they are, so I think I'm just gonna get a more aggressive heat shrink tubing for it. So it's very important that everything that you get that's gonna be in here is PTFE rated, okay? And you mainly want PTFE because it handles like methanol or E85, you know, stuff like that. It handles those types of fuels. If you use regular rubber hoses and stuff, they'll break down over time. And if they break down, they'll end up getting into your fuel system and clogging like your injectors or your fuel filter or your pump. It'll make it go bad within like under a year or so. So it's very important to get PTFE hoses that are rated for the fuel. But yep, this is the complete product. And a future video, I'm gonna say, well, I'll probably buy the product soon to do it. I'm gonna show you guys how to set up this and this for AN lines, because again, we're gonna need PTFE tubing. We can't use the plastic tubing, the OEM plastic tubing. So we're gonna have to buy PTFE adapters for these, and then we're gonna use AN fittings for all of this. And I'll show you guys how to do that in a future video. Hopefully no later than by the end of June. But yeah, this is gonna be your Venturi fuel pump setup for the bigger fuel pumps to help you pull in fuel from the siphoning tube, which is this guy, and also work in conjunction with the fuel return system that you'll be doing. Yeah guys, so that's pretty much it for this video. Big shout out to SNH Performance. He has a YouTube channel. I'll link it down in the description below. Pretty much they have a couple videos going over the Venturi setup and testing it, making sure that it works correctly with your OEM siphoning tube. And he's using as a demonstration a Walbro 525 fuel pump. So it was great to watch those videos and learn off of him. And I also sent him a few messages to answer for me, and he answered all of them for me. So my knowledge wouldn't be up to date if it weren't for him. And big shout out to Adam at Weekend Garage. If it weren't for Adam, then I wouldn't have done any of this at all. Adam has a pretty much the same video on how to do this, but not an in-depth how-to video. He just pretty much shows you how he has his set up and show proof that it's working, pulling fuel from the siphoning tube. Again, big shout out to Adam. If you guys want to go check out his channel, I'll go ahead and link it in the description below as well. Again, if it wasn't for Adam, then I wouldn't have been able to do this at all. So thank him for pretty much, you know, showing me like a demonstration on how he did his setup. And I'm just able to pass it on to you guys now. So the next video we're gonna be tackling after this is learning how to set up a custom fuel return system, how to do it yourself, how to assemble it, what to buy, you know, all that good stuff, Pt.1, AN, braided lines, and all that good stuff. I'll be showing you guys how to do all that in the next video potentially. Also, if you guys are interested in all the parts that I'm using in this, I'm gonna link all the parts that I had used in the description below as well. These are Pt.1 hoses. This is a Deshworks 400 fuel pump, Radium Venturi, a -6 AN to 6 AN barb fitting, and these are ear clamps, and this is Pt.1 heat shrinked tubing. But yeah, so I'll see you guys back in a couple weeks when I have the material to do the return system, and we'll go ahead and start hitting that so we can go ahead and finish up our custom fuel return system for any Genesis Coupe. Peace out, guys.